This is Sokoto State, one of the northern states where poverty is crazily high. About 90% of the people who live here survive on less than $2 per day. That is more than 4 million people who struggle to feed each day. But despite this high level of poverty, the state was able to generate 18.16 billion naira in 2023 as part of its internally generated revenue. The bad news though was that this figure was a 21.42% decrease from the previous year's revenue, which stood at 23.11 billion naira. So, to survive, the government of Sokoto turned to the Nigerian federal government for handouts. 81.37 billion naira, accounting for 81.75% of the state's total recurrent revenue, came from the federal government in 2023. However, for a state that depends on handouts to operate, one would wonder why they will then turn around to spend 57% of their total expenditure on operational costs. This means less money is set aside for critical infrastructure and development initiatives that could stimulate economic growth for the state. Oh, lest I forget, the state does a lot of borrowing too. Like in 2023, when the state government thought it wise to take its debt burden from 107 billion naira a year earlier to 122 billion naira. While this incompetence might leave you banging your head on a wall, I need to remind you that Sokoto State is not an outlier here. In fact, this is the norm in all 36 states of the Federation, which then leaves one wondering, if Nigeria is so rich in resources, why are many of its states so poor? The simple answer to this question, of course, is corruption, but we've hammered on that word for far too long, and I think it's time we dive a little bit deeper into some other factors. First, take a look at this stat. 21 of Nigeria's 36 states relied on the federal government to send them money to carry out at least 80% of their usual financial obligations in 2023. That is basically relying on handouts to operate their government. But guess what these state governors do with the money once it arrives? Yeah, they build airports, giant worship centers, and other ridiculous projects, thereby raising their expenditures to crazy numbers. According to the report by Budget, the 36 states combined spending in 2023 came to 9.78 trillion naira. Now, keep this figure in mind because it will be important to our story shortly. Well, as expected, these state governors pointed to rising capital investments, overheads, and staff costs as reason for the increase in spending. But for states generating so little money, why are they spending so much? Where do all this money go? In recent weeks, a lot of people have reached out to me to learn how to express or communicate their ideas in the form of full-length videos like I do. You know, the kind you've always wanted to create, the kind you'd be excited to share within your peers in the most seamless, intuitive way possible, irrespective of your skill level. Now, in-video AI enables you to do just that. All you have to do is type in the idea you want to create a video about. It's pretty game-changing. You can even edit whatever you like using simple text commands like add my voice. How cool is that? Now, unlike traditional video tools with steep learning curves that only solve parts of your video creation process, InVideo is the creative partner that you have always wanted. It removes all friction and puts you in the director's seat, letting you focus entirely on your vision and your idea while InVideo AI does all the heavy lifting. You can try InVideo AI for free today. This will save you hundreds of dollars that you would otherwise spend on editing, animating, and other production costs. Use the link in the description box below to start bringing your ideas to life today. Thank you InVideo for sponsoring this video. Now, let's jump right back into our story. Nigerian states generate revenue in two primary ways. First, from internally generated revenue, often referred to as IGR, or from allocations from the federal government, known as the Federal Account Allocation Committee, FAAC for short. Other income sources can include loans and grants. The IGRs generated by states through the collection of taxes and revenues from ministries, departments, and agencies show the fiscal wellness and economic viability of a state. This money is often used to build infrastructures and execute other developmental projects to help boost the economy of the state. So when your hospitals are bad, you have potholes in your roads, or lack access to drinking water, the government can quickly turn to these funds to fix these challenges for the residents. This is their responsibility, and it is why we vote them into office, to improve our quality of life. Now, the challenge though is, many states in Nigeria don't make enough money to carry out these responsibilities. According to data from the National Bureau of Statistics, the 36 states of Nigeria and the Federal Capital Territory generated a combined 2.43 trillion naira in 2023. The southwestern states generated the highest IGR at 1.12 trillion naira, followed by South-South at 468.74 billion naira. North Central generated 387.65 billion naira, while Northwest generated 206.22 billion naira. The Southeastern states brought in 142.95 billion naira, and Northeast came last with 104.35 billion naira. Now, this is a huge sum of money, right? 2.43 trillion naira, and they should be proud of themselves. But hang on, do you remember the total spending for the same 2023? Yeah, the 36 states had a combined spending of 9.7 trillion naira in 2023 alone. So, where did the rest of that money come from? Here is where the federal allocation bonanza comes in. According to reports, Rivers and Lagos were the only two states that generated more than enough internally generated revenue to cover their operating expenses. All the others had to rely on handouts from the federal government. This is the first reason why Nigerian states are so poor. Over-reliance on federal government allocations have destroyed the local economies of these states, and the governors no longer look for ways to earn money within. And there's a huge problem with this sort of operation. You see, with each new government that comes into power, the elected officials want to create jobs and roles for the people that fought for their campaigns and ensured they got elected. God help you if the leader is one who looks to reward his loyal goons as opposed to hiring competent hands. Sometimes there are not enough existing roles to go around, so they go about creating new offices just to accommodate their party loyalists. This then leads to the creation of a very large government that now needs more money for operational costs, in which case the government is forced to spend more money but not on its people. Now, with the states not generating enough money by themselves, most have to rely on whatever leftovers the federal government send their way for them to be able to pay salaries and keep the states functional. As a result, roads don't get fixed, schools don't get built, and hospitals lack the funds to operate optimally. Now that we are on the topic of what doesn't get built, let's see what these state governors choose to spend your money on instead. According to a quarterly report by this body, in 2023, a total of 10 trillion naira was shared among the federal government, states, and local government councils from the federation account as statutory revenue allocations. Of this amount, the federal government received 3.9 trillion naira, representing 39% of the total allocation, while the 36 states received 3.5 trillion naira, and the 774 local governments had to share the balance of 2.5 trillion naira. These records show that the Nigerian states, to an extent, do not have a revenue problem. When we get into the spending, however, it becomes a whole different story. Now, here's what I mean. This is the Ebonyi Airport, located in Abakaliki, Ebonyi State of Nigeria. It officially opened for business on the 26th of April 2023. The Ebonyi State government reportedly spent 10 billion naira on the initial work, with the then governor assuring citizens and residents of the state that this project would deliver commodities and boost the state's economy. Unfortunately though, a few months after the inauguration, reports surfaced that the Ebonyi State Airport runway had developed some issues. Governor Francis Nwifuru, the incumbent governor, revealed in August 2024 that he would spend more than 13 billion naira to restore the already dilapidated runway. The total expenditure for the airport has since climbed to over 53 billion naira. Before the construction of this airport, about 200 houses were reportedly demolished in the area by the then Omahi-led government. This resulted in the displacement of over 800 natives, including elderly people. An investigation by Punch newspapers revealed that most of the owners of the affected houses were never compensated. The few that were lucky got something between 200 to 400,000 naira. However, with all of this investment, the airport has struggled to attract passengers, with some reports indicating zero passenger traffic in a calendar month. The airport, which should be a source of income, is currently economically dormant and inactive, while at the same time adding to the misery and hardship that the people of this state endure. In recent months, we have seen clips showing some people using the airport premises for religious activities. Maybe they are now praying for customers to come use the airport. And did I mention that Ebonyi State is one of the poorest in Nigeria? It has a poverty rate of over 48%. But if you think Ebonyi's case is terrible, how do I begin to explain that of Jigawa? This is Jude International Airport. It was built by the administration of Governor Sule Lamido and commissioned by former President Goodluck Jonathan in 2014 at the cost of 4 billion naira at the time. According to Business Day, the airport, which now serves just the people of Dutse and the nearby towns, is mostly used once a year to transport Muslim pilgrims from the state to Saudi Arabia. It also opens to prominent VIPs or high-ranking government officials visiting the state via chartered flights. Despite being commissioned in 2014, the airport has failed to generate significant passenger traffic or revenue, recording zero passenger traffic in a calendar year in one instance. But let's leave Jigawa alone for a moment and come to this middle belt state plagued by insecurity. The most successful businesses you will find in Benue State are beer parlors and filling stations. Yeah, they got a few banks, and thanks to my resilient friends who were falsely accused and harassed alongside with me by the EFCC back in 2019, the state now has a single cinema to serve its 23 local governments. But before this recent wave of development, something happened. In 2016, during the early days of Governor Samuel Otom, the state government and a certain cargo police development consortiums, a private investor, signed a memorandum of understanding to build a cargo airport in Makurdi for 37.9 billion naira at the time. Benue State would give 1,000 hectares as well as an equity commitment of 5.2 billion naira under a public-private partnership arrangement. The MOU contained a 25-year concession period, with the project scheduled to last 18 months. The state government was also expected to give 3 billion naira in compensation to people whose lands were damaged by the project. The project was meant to encourage the export of agricultural products. Pureza Investment International, the project facilitator, stated that the development would include the opening of an aviation school at the airport with a capacity of 50 students at a time. At the airport's groundbreaking ceremony, Otom urged residents of the host community to work with those involved in this development, assuring them that this project would provide countless employment, riches, and possibilities at a low cost to the state government. He also stated that the project, which was anticipated to be completed in 2020, will put Benue on the global aviation map, making it a hub for West Africa, boost transportation, and alter the host community. Well, years passed by, but little was seen of this project. Otom would go on to owe salaries to primary school teachers and pensioners all through his administration. The airport is yet to materialize, while Benue fruits go to waste each year. And if we go over to Zamfara, the former governor Mahmoud Aliyu Shinkafi initiated the construction of an airport in 2008 and paid compensation to farmers for the land acquired for this project. However, he could not commence construction before he left office. When Governor Abdulaziz Abubakar Yari came on board in 2011, he could not do much to execute the project as his government tackled other crucial issues within the state. The next administration under Governor Bela Matawale therefore initiated the project to bolster economic opportunities in Zamfara by facilitating air cargo transportation in the state. Initially, the airport was projected to cost around 28 billion naira. This estimate was reportedly adjusted to 11 billion naira, a drastic reduction that raised questions about project scope and contractor agreements. The former governor, Mr. Bela, initially awarded the airport construction contract to Avic International Engineering Limited for 11.4 billion naira. The government paid 3.5 billion naira, a 30% mobilization, to start the work, and later on an additional 2.3 billion naira due to COVID-19 lockdown, totaling 5.8 billion naira paid for the project. In recent months, however, the Zamfara state government under the recent governor Dauda Lawal in 2023 raised serious concerns with regards to the uncompleted Gusau International Airport. The state released documentary and pictorial evidence against the previous administration of Bello Matawale, who is currently the Minister of State for Defense. It is alleged that the former governor directed the Ministry of Local Government to withdraw 1 billion naira from the local government joint account on the 25th of October 2021 and paid 825 million naira to the contractors without any valuation. Surprisingly, the new Zamfara state government under this guy re-awarded the contract for the construction of the Gusau International Cargo Airport for a whopping 62.8 billion naira. So far, several reports have shown the huge amount of money being spent by Nigerian governors on these white elephant projects. Akwa Ibom spent 20 billion naira, while Bayelsa State spent 60 billion naira. Jigawa and Delta States each spent 17 billion naira, while Bauchi invested 15 billion naira. Kebbi invested 15 billion naira in an airport project as well. Other states going this same route include Ogun State 20 billion, Ekiti 20 billion, Abia State 40 billion naira, Kebbi 15 billion, Nasarawa 40 billion, and Osun State 40 billion naira. According to reports, out of the 32 airports in Nigeria, only 5 located in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Kano, and Enugu handle about 89.7% of passenger traffic. This leaves the remaining 27 state airports to share a mere 10% of the air traffic. This wasteful spending is another reason why Nigerian states are so poor. State governors going out of their way to spend billions of naira on projects that add little or nothing to their state's economies, while schools close down, hospitals are in poor shape, and roads lack maintenance. This points to the lack of competent leaders in the country. But are they just building these projects just to beautify their states, or is there something more sinister at play here? Let's talk about corruption and poor governance in Nigerian states. Between 2020 and 2022, the EFCC secured 6,981 convictions, according to data obtained from their website. In 2020, the Commission reportedly secured 976 convictions, 2,220 in 2021, and an unprecedented 3,785 in 2022. Yet, no former governor was among the 6,981 persons convicted for fraud in the period under review. Some of the cases are still in court. Some have been dismissed for lack of diligent prosecution by the agency, and those affected have since been acquitted. Some former governors visited the EFCC over petitions against them, and nothing was heard thereafter. Some of these governors that have faced or are still facing corruption allegations include this guy, Theodore Orji, a former governor of Abia State and former senator, who was under investigation by the EFCC for extensive corruption allegations. Orji was detained briefly in August 2021 at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja, along with his son Chinedu, for misappropriation of public funds and money laundering. The ex-governor was alleged to have received 500 million naira monthly as security votes for 8 years as governor of Abia State between 2007 and 2015. Other allegations against him included alleged mismanagement of a 2 billion naira ecological fund and mismanagement of Shopee funds. Another governor who has been in the news for corruption charges lately is this guy, Yahaya Bello. The EFCC is prosecuting Yahaya Bello alongside Ali Bello, Dauda Suleiman, and Abdusalam Hudu on 19-count charges bordering on money laundering to the tune of 80 billion naira. On April 17th, The EFCC operatives restricted movements in and around Bello's house in Abuja. But they suddenly became powerless when this man, Usman Ododo, Bello's successor, arrived and was later seen living with Yahya Bello. Amongst many allegations, the EFCC has accused Mr. Bello of dishonestly diverting more than 110 billion naira from the Kogi state government's treasury while he was governor for 8 years. It also alleged in various counts that Mr. Bello dishonestly acquired for himself properties located in choice areas of Abuja and one in Dubai, all with funds he allegedly diverted from the state government's treasury. Some of the diverted funds were reportedly intended for infrastructural projects, leaving many parts of Kogi state without basic amenities such as good roads, clean water, and functional hospitals. Another former governor wanted for fraud is Darius Ishaku of Taraba State. The former governor left office in 2023 after serving as governor for 8 years. Upon leaving office, he was charged with 15 counts charge bordering on criminal breach of trust, conspiracy, and conversion of public funds to the tune of 27 billion naira. There is also our guy, Samuel Otom of Benue State, who is accused of an alleged fraud to the tune of 22 billion naira. The allegations were contained in a report of an investigation which began in 2016. According to the report, the governor between June 30, 2015 and March 2018 ordered the withdrawal of 21.3 billion naira from 4 government accounts in Guaranty Trust Bank, First Bank of Nigeria, and the United Bank for Africa. On paper, about 19 billion naira out of the money was said to be meant for the payment of 6 security agencies that had been deployed in the state to address the cases of clashes between herdsmen and farmers. However, the EFCC stated that less than 3 billion naira of that money was paid to the security agencies, while the remainder could not be accounted for. Now, I don't need to remind you of how many people died in Benue State as the result of the said insecurity. Finally, on alleged corruption, we have Ifeanyi Okowa, the former governor of Delta State, who was detained by EFCC operatives recently in Port Harcourt for alleged diversion of 1.3 trillion naira. This is crazy. This 1.3 trillion naira amounted to 13% deviation fund from the federal account between 2015 and 2023. And this corruption is the third reason why Nigerian states are so poor. While the actions of these men may at a first glance appear harmless, after all, they are not pointing a gun at you and taking your property or money directly from your bank. I'd like to point out that this directly affects you. You see, when politicians take away the ability of state governments to spend scarce resources on infrastructure, we end up with roads like this. According to the Federal Road Safety Corps, more than 21,509 persons died in road crashes across Nigeria between 2021 and 2024. How about the poor healthcare system in our states? Nigeria's maternal mortality rate is 1,047 deaths per 100,000 live births. This is higher than the regional average. This is one of the highest in the world, competing with countries like Chad and Sudan. In fact, the stress in Nigerian hospitals can kill the patient before the sickness. We have doctors living in droves because of lack of quality medical facilities and poor welfare of medical personnel. Yes, it turns out doctors are human too. And if we turn our attention to the education sector, the story is the same. Schools are collapsing, teachers are going on strike, and students are turning to fraud. The security architecture of our states are not left out. How many state governments in Nigeria can boast of 90% security of their citizens? Okay, let's try 80. Anyone? We have security personnel advising citizens not to stay out late to avoid being victims of insecurity. You see, there's a human impact to the deplorable state of things in Nigeria. And while the buck stops at the table of the president, state governors need to be held responsible some more. But the question is, how can this be done?